everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring something I think is super fascinating and really relevant to all of us. We're going to be talking about therapy and emotional intelligence, and specifically how they kind of work together to help us lead more successful, more fulfilling lives.
Right. They're definitely connected.
Yeah, and luckily we have a great source to guide us. 10 valuable therapy and emotional intelligence advice for success.
I love that source. It's funny because we often think of therapy as something we only do when we're really struggling, when things are really, really badly. We're in a crisis.
Yeah, totally.
But this source makes it really clear. Therapy can be something we use proactively for growth, even when we're not like in the middle of a crisis.
Yeah, like a preventative measure, almost like taking your emotional well-being to the gym.
I like that analogy. That's a good one.
Just building up those mental muscles, like, building up your resilience.
Exactly. It's like we go to the doctor, right,
Good.
for regular checkups, even when we feel fine.
Right.
Just to make sure that we're, preventing any major health issues down the line. Therapy can be like that.
Right. So it's almost like, how many of us are like really taking the time to invest in our mental health proactively? I think it's something we probably all could do more of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, there's the other half of the equation, emotional intelligence, or EQ, as everyone loves to call it.
Right, EQ.
It's a bit of a buzzword these days. I feel like everyone's throwing it around. But what does it actually mean in practical terms?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more than just a buzzword. It's actually really crucial in how we navigate pretty much every aspect of our lives, whether it's our personal lives or our professional lives. Yeah. EQ is really, at its core, about being able to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotion.
Okay, yeah.
But it's also equally about being able to empathize with others and understand where they're coming from.
So it's not just about me and how I feel, it's about being able to understand other people's feelings too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about a time when you've had a really difficult conversation, maybe with a coworker or a family member or a loved one. How did you handle that situation?
Right.
If you were able to stay calm, if you were able to really listen to their perspective.
Yeah.
And communicate clearly without getting defensive.
Yeah.
That's emotional intelligence at work.
And that makes me wonder, do you think strong EQ skills can help with de-escalating conflict or even prevent it from happening in the first place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that our source brings up that I think is really important is this whole idea of mental health stigma.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've made some progress, but there's still a lot of work to do.
There is. I think sometimes there's this feeling that asking for help is somehow a weakness.
Oh, for sure. But it's actually the opposite,
Yeah.
Being able to recognize that you could benefit from support and then having the courage to actually reach out for help, that takes incredible strength.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's like saying, hey, I'm taking responsibility for my well-being.
Right. And prioritizing our mental health is just as important as prioritizing our physical health.
100%. They're interconnected and both deserve attention.
Definitely. And that reminds me of another key point from the source, which is this whole idea of self-awareness. It feels like self-awareness is almost like the meeting point between therapy and emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think so too.
How would you describe self-awareness? Like, what is it?
I think the self-awareness, almost like having like an inner compass,
Yeah.
It's what helps us understand our thoughts and feelings and even our motivations.
And therapy can really help with that, can it?
Absolutely. Therapy can be a powerful tool for developing that self-awareness.
So it's not just about feeling better, it's about getting to know yourself better. Would you say that's true?
Oh, for sure. And therapy can be like a really safe space to kind of explore all of that, all those deeper parts of ourselves. And it helps us, recognize patterns in our thoughts and behaviors, which ultimately helps us make more conscious choices.
So we can start to break those cycles.
Exactly. And our source mentions some other great ways to cultivate self-awareness too.
Oh yeah, like what?
Outside of therapy, like journaling. I know a lot of people find journaling really helpful, and mindfulness.
Oh, mindfulness is a big one for me. I think it's really helped me to notice my automatic reactions. To think it's like hitting the pause button before you react.
That's such a good point. I mean, that pause can be so valuable.
It is.
Because by becoming aware of our thoughts and feelings, we can then start to understand what triggers those automatic reactions in the first place.
Right, and that's where therapy can be incredibly helpful, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it helps us actually identify those triggers.
Yeah.
Like the specific situations, or even people that tend to push our buttons.
Oh, yeah.
And then develop healthier ways to respond to them.
So, instead of just reacting on autopilot,
Right.
we're learning how to like disarm those emotional landmines that we all have.
Yes. It's like taking back control,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about mastering our inner world.
Yeah, I like that.
So we can navigate the outer world more effectively.
And speaking of navigating the outer world, I'm really curious to hear more about how empathy plays into all of this.
Okay, yeah.
Because, it feels like empathy is such a crucial skill for our relationships, for all of our relationships.
It really is. I think empathy is like the glue that holds relationships together.
Oh, I like that.
It allows us to connect on such a deeper level and build trust. And it's about stepping outside of ourselves, and truly trying to understand another person's perspective.
And that's not always easy.
No, it's not. It's not always easy.
But I think active listening is a big part of that, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Active listening is about being fully present with the other person,
Yeah.
putting aside our own thoughts and judgments, and just really focusing on what they're saying.
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in our own heads, right? and totally miss what the other person is trying to communicate.
Oh, for sure. It happens all the time.
It does. But when we truly listen, when we really make an effort to understand, I think that's when we create space for real connection.
Yes, definitely. And empathy.
And empathy.
For sure.
So that brings us to boundaries. And our source, really emphasizes the importance of setting healthy boundaries in all of our relationships.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, boundaries are so essential for protecting our energy and our well-being.
It's about recognizing our limits.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then communicating them clearly.
Clearly and respectfully.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not about shutting people out. It's about defining what's okay for us and what's not okay for us.
Exactly. And it's about honoring ourselves and the other person.
Yeah.
And creating that space where both people feel safe and respected.
But what about when someone pushes back against our boundaries, or tries to guilt trip us into doing something that we really don't want to do?
Yeah, that's tough. That can be really challenging.
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that we do have a right to protect our well-being.
Yeah.
Sometimes saying no is the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and for the other person, ultimately.
Yeah. It's like
Right.
setting those clear expectations.
Exactly. So everyone knows, everyone knows where they stand.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like an act of self-care.
Yes.
But also of caring for the relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how boundaries often tie into the concept of vulnerability,
Oh, tell me about that.
because, our source talks about how vulnerability is often seen as this weakness,
Yeah.
but it's actually a strength,
It is. It is.
and it's about authenticity. It's about courage and allowing ourselves to be seen, even with our imperfections.
Yeah, but it can feel really scary to let people see the real us. What if we get judged or rejected?
Right. Well, I think there's always that risk.
Yeah.
There's always that risk.
Yeah.
But, the alternative is that we just build all these walls around ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And then we end up missing out on those really deep connections with other people.
Yeah. And it's almost like vulnerability is the key to real intimacy.
I think so. When we open ourselves up, we create space for genuine connection.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a risk worth taking.
It is. And speaking of risk, another key skill for navigating life's ups and downs is emotional regulation,
Oh, yeah.
which, our source describes as the ability to respond to situations rather than just react impulsively.
Right. Right. So it's about mastering that inner world.
Yeah. And it's about recognizing our emotions, understanding where they're coming from, and choosing how we want to respond to them.
So instead of just having that knee-jerk rereaction.
Exactly. And that's where techniques like mindfulness and deep breathing can be so helpful.
Yeah. How do those techniques help us regulate our emotions?
Well, mindfulness helps us just become aware of our emotions in the moment.
Yeah.
Without judgment. It's like we hit that pause button.
Yeah.
And we can observe our emotions without getting swept away by them.
And then that pause gives us a chance to actually choose a more thoughtful response.
Exactly. And then deep breathing can be really helpful for calming our nervous system, which can be especially helpful when we're feeling really overwhelmed by strong emotions.
Yeah, those are great tools. So it's like we have a toolkit of strategies for navigating those intense emotional moments.
It is.
And mastering those emotional regulation skills, I think, can have a ripple effect in all areas of our lives.
For sure. It can help us manage stress better,
Yeah.
communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, It can even improve our physical health.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When we're chronically stressed
Or
emotionally overwhelmed,
yeah,
it takes a toll on our bodies.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So learning to regulate our emotions isn't just about feeling better in the moment. It's about improving our overall well-being.
It is.
And it takes practice.
Of course.
Because like any skill,
Yeah. Yeah.
the more we practice, the better we get at it.
Yeah. And our source emphasizes that this is an ongoing practice. It's not like we just reached this point where we've mastered emotional regulation and then we're done.
Right. It's a lifelong journey of self-discovery and growth.
It is. And that journey can be challenging at times.
It can be.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. Because it leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Exactly. And speaking of that journey, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Our source, it talks about therapy as a tool for personal growth.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to acknowledge that therapy isn't always easy.
It's not. It can be really hard work.
It can.
Yeah. Yeah.
It requires us to confront difficult emotions.
Yeah.
Memories.
And sometimes challenge our own, beliefs, our patterns.
Exactly. So while therapy can be so beneficial, it's important to go into it with realistic expectations.
And to be patient with ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because healing
takes time.
It does. It
takes time.
And it's not always linear.
That's so true.
Yeah.
There will be ups and downs along the way.
Absolutely. But even those setbacks can be really valuable.
They can.
They
can teach us so much about our own resilience and our capacity for growth.
And remind us that that we're not alone in this journey.
Right.
We all have our own struggles, and there's no shame in asking for help.
Absolutely not.
In fact, it's a sign of strength.
For sure. And something that can make that journey a little bit easier is having a strong support system in place.
Oh yeah. Tell me about that.
Having people we can turn to for love and support and encouragement, it can make a world of difference.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders in our corner.
Exactly. And that team can include friends, family members, therapists, obviously, support groups, even online communities.
Right. Yeah.
The important thing is to just find those people who make us feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah, definitely. And something else that I think can be really helpful is finding healthy ways to cope with stress.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. Because stress is, it's part of life, it's unavoidable, but it can really take a toll on our mental and emotional health.
For sure. So it's essential to have a toolkit of strategies, for managing stress.
What are some of your favorite stress busting techniques?
Okay, well, exercise is always a great one.
Yeah.
Because it releases endorphins, which have those mood boosting effects.
Yeah, and it gets you out of your head and into your body.
Exactly. And spending time in nature is another one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
Being in nature has been shown to reduce stress, improve mental clarity.
It's like a reset button for our minds.
It is. And then, of course, there's, practices like mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
Which can be incredibly helpful.
They help us calm the mind.
They do.
And focus on the present moment.
Exactly. And sometimes, it's also just helpful to have some fun.
Oh, yes.
Like laughter is the best medicine, as they say.
It is.
Doing things that we enjoy, whether it's reading or listening to music or spending time with loved ones, those things can help us recharge.
Yeah, it's about finding those activities that bring us joy and make us feel alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then speaking of feeling alive, I think it's important to talk about the role of purpose in our lives.
Oh yeah, purpose is a big one.
It is.
Why is it so important?
Well, I think when we have a sense of purpose, it gives our lives meaning and direction. It helps us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
It's almost like having a North Star.
It is.
To guide us.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And finding our purpose can be a lifelong journey.
It can. It can evolve and change over time, right?
It can.
Yeah.
And it's not always about finding one big grand purpose.
Right.
Sometimes it's about find purpose in the everyday moments.
Yeah. I love that.
It could be in our relationships, our work, our hobbies, even the simple act of helping others.
Right.
It's about finding what lights us up.
Oh, and what makes us...
It makes us feel passionate.
Yes, absolutely.
And when we live with purpose, it can have a profound impact on our mental and emotional well-being.
I think so too.
It can give us a sense of hope, optimism.
Yeah. And it can even it can even motivate us to take better care of ourselves.
Right.
Because we know we have something important to contribute
Exactly.
to the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So cultivating a sense of purpose is almost like an act of self-care.
It is.
Yeah, what?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that taking care of our mental and emotional health isn't just about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's about showing up fully
Yeah.
for the world.
I love that.
Well,
this has been such a rich and insightful conversation so far.
It has.
I feel like we've covered so much ground.
Me too.
We've explored vulnerability and boundaries and emotional regulation, the importance of support systems, stress management, even the role of purpose in our lives. And it's
all connected,
Yeah.
It's all connected to this idea of using therapy and emotional intelligence.
to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, there's one more topic I want to touch on.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, our source mentions this idea of growth being a lifelong journey.
Right.
And I think
Right.
it's important to acknowledge that this journey isn't always easy.
Absolutely not. There
Yeah.
will be challenges
There will?
and setbacks along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's okay to not have all the answers.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it's in those moments of uncertainty and struggle
Yeah.
that we learn the most about ourselves.
I think so too. It's like those times force us to dig deeper and find new resources within ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes those challenges can even lead to unexpected breakthroughs.
That's true. That's true. So it's about embracing, the messy, imperfect nature of growth.
It is. It is. And remembering that we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, we don't. We have each other. We have our support systems, and we have the tools of therapy and emotional intelligence to guide us.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in the second part of our deep dive, but there's still so much to explore. We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up and leave you with some final thoughts. Stay tuned.
As we're talking about this journey of growth, it really strikes me that vulnerability plays such a huge role
Yeah.
in both therapy and developing emotional intelligence.
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you say that?
Well, think about it. Therapy, it often requires us to be vulnerable with our therapist.
Yeah.
To share our deepest fears and insecurities, the things that we might not even share with our closest friends and family.
That's true. That's true. And it takes a lot of courage to open up like that.
It does. And that same courage, I think, is needed to be vulnerable in all of our relationships, really.
Yeah. Yeah. To really connect with someone on a deeper level, I think you have to let them see the real you.
Absolutely.
Warts and all.
Yeah. And that can be terrifying.
It can.
Yeah. But it's also incredibly liberating.
I can see that.
Because when we embrace vulnerability,
Yeah.
we open ourselves up to deeper, more authentic connections.
It's like taking off a mask and finally being able to breathe.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And our source touches on this idea that vulnerability is often seen as a weakness,
Right.
but it's actually a superpower.
I love that. I love that. Why do you think vulnerability is so powerful?
Well, I think for one thing, it allows us to build trust.
Okay.
When we show our true selves to others,
Yeah.
it signals that we trust them
Right.
enough to see us, at our most vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that creates, that foundation for deeper, more meaningful relationships.
Exactly. And it also allows us to receive support.
Yeah.
When we're vulnerable, we're essentially saying, hey, I need help with this.
Yeah.
And that opens the door for other people to offer their support.
And it takes the pressure off of having to be perfect all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Which none of us are.
None of us are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also allows us to be more compassionate,
Yeah.
I think, towards ourselves and others.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
When we recognize our own vulnerability, it's easier to extend that same compassion to others.
It is.
When they're struggling.
It's like that saying, hurt people, healed people, heal people.
Yes, that's a great example.
So vulnerability, I think, is really a key ingredient in both personal growth and healthy relationships.
And our source.
Yeah.
It also highlights the importance of setting boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, boundaries are so essential.
They are.
For protecting our energy and well-being. They're like the fences that we put around our emotional gardens
I love that analogy.
to keep the weeds out.
Yeah. But setting boundaries can be tricky, can it?
It can be.
Yeah.
Especially if we're not used to doing it,
Yeah.
But it's a skill that can be learned with practice.
So what are some tips for setting boundaries effectively?
Well, I think the first step is to really identify our own needs and limits. You know, what are we comfortable with and what are we not comfortable with?
So it starts with knowing ourselves first.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Once we know our own boundaries, then we can start to communicate them to others.
Right. But that communication piece can be tough.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. Especially, you know, if we're worried about hurting someone's feelings or causing conflict.
Right.
You know?
I think it's important to remember that we have a right to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means saying no, even when it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not about, you know, being mean or rude. It's about being clear.
It's about being assertive.
Clear and assertive.
Exactly.
Exactly. So it's about finding that
we can communicate our boundaries in a way that's both firm and respectful.
Yeah. So it's about finding that balance between honoring our own needs and respecting the needs of others.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And you know, something that can really help us set and maintain those boundaries.
Yeah.
Is
what's that?
Is emotional regulation.
Oh yes, emotional regulation. That's about being able to manage our emotions effectively.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about recognizing our emotions, understanding where they're coming from, and choosing how we want to respond to them
instead of just reacting automatically.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is where techniques like mindfulness and deep breathing can be so helpful.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, you know, mindfulness helps us to become aware of our emotions in the moment.
Yeah.
Without judgment. It's like hitting that pause button.
Yeah.
So we can observe our emotions without getting swept away by them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that pause, I think.
That pause.
It gives us a chance to actually choose a more thoughtful response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And deep breathing can be really helpful for calming our nervous system.
Yeah.
Which can be especially helpful when we're feeling, really overwhelmed by strong emotions.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like we have this toolkit of strategies
Yes.
for navigating those intense emotional moments.
We do.
Yeah.
You know, and mastering those emotional regulation skills, it can have a ripple effect, you know, in all areas of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it can help us manage stress, communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships. I think you even mentioned earlier that it can improve our physical health.
It can. It can. You know, when we're chronically stressed or emotionally overwhelmed, it takes a toll.
Yeah, it does. It does. So learning to regulate our emotions, it's not just about feeling better in the moment.
No.
It's about improving our overall well-being.
Exactly. And it takes practice.
Of course.
Just like any other skill.
Yeah.
The more we practice, the better we get at it.
Yeah. And the source emphasizes that this is an ongoing practice. It's not like we reach a point where we've mastered emotional regulation and we're done.
Right. It's a lifelong journey.
It is.
Of self-discovery and growth.
And that journey can be challenging at times.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also incredibly rewarding.
It is. It is, because it leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking of that journey, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something.
Oh yeah, what's that?
You know, our source, it talks about therapy as a tool for personal growth.
Right.
You know, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that therapy isn't always easy.
It's not. It's not. It can be really hard work.
It can be. It can be. You know, it requires us to confront difficult emotions, memories.
Sometimes even trauma.
Yeah. And to challenge our own beliefs and patterns.
Exactly. Yeah. So while therapy can be so beneficial, you know, I think it's important to go into it with realistic expectations.
And to be patient with ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because healing takes time.
It does.
It does.
It takes time, and it's not always linear.
It's not.
Yeah, there will be ups and downs along the way.
But even those setbacks can be valuable.
They can.
Right.
They can teach us so much about our own resilience and our capacity for growth.
And they can remind us that we're not alone.
That's right. That's right.
You know, we all have our own struggles.
We do.
And there's no shame in asking for help.
Absolutely not. In fact, it's a sign of strength.
And you know, I think something that can make that journey a little bit easier is having a strong support system.
Absolutely.
In place. Absolutely. You know, having people that we can turn to for love and support and encouragement, it can make a world of difference.
Yeah. It's like having a team of cheerleaders in our corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that team, you know, it can include friends and family members and therapists, obviously, and support groups, even online communities.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The important thing is to just find those people who make us feel seen, heard, and understood.
Definitely. And you know, something else that I think can be really helpful is finding healthy ways to cope with stress.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It is because stress is part of life, you know?
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. but it can really take a toll on our mental and emotional health.
It can. So it's essential to have a toolkit of strategies, for managing stress.
What are some of your favorite stress busting techniques?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, exercise is always a great one.
Yeah.
Because it releases endorphins, which have those mood boosting effects.
Yeah. And it gets you out of your head and into your body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Spending time in nature is another one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
Being in nature has been shown to reduce stress, improve mental clarity.
It's like a reset button.
It is.
For our mind.
It is.
Yeah.
And then of course there's, practices like mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
Which can be incredibly helpful.
They help us calm the mind.
They do.
And focus on the present moment.
Exactly. And, sometimes it's also just helpful to have some fun.
Oh, yes. Laughter is the best medicine.
It is. It is,
Yeah.
Doing things that we enjoy, whether it's reading or listening to music or spending time with loved ones.
Yeah.
Those things can help us recharge and de-stress.
It's about finding those activities that bring us joy.
Exactly.
And make us feel alive.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling alive, I think it's important to talk about the role of purpose in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Purpose is a big one.
It is. It is.
Why do you think purpose is so important?
Well, I think when we have a sense of purpose, it gives our lives meaning and direction.
Yeah.
It helps us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. It's like having a North Star to guide us.
It is. It is. And finding our purpose
Yeah.
can be a lifelong journey.
It can. It can. It can evolve and change over time.
It can. And it's not always about finding one big grand purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's about finding purpose in the everyday moments.
I love that. Yeah.
It can be in our relationships, our work, our hobbies.
Or even just the simple act of helping others.
Right.
It's
It's about finding what lights us up.
Yeah. What makes us feel passionate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we live with purpose, it can have a profound impact on our mental and emotional well-being.
I think so too. It can give us a sense of hope, optimism.
Yeah.
And it can even motivate us to take better care of ourselves.
Right. Because we know we have something important to contribute
Exactly.
to the world.
Exactly.
I love that. So cultivating a sense of purpose is almost like an act of self-care.
It is.
In a way.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that taking care of our mental and emotional health isn't just about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's about showing up fully for the world.
I love that.
Well,
this has been such a rich and insightful conversation. I feel like we've covered so much ground.
Me too.
We've explored vulnerability and boundaries, emotional regulation, the importance of support systems.
It's a lot.
Stress management.
It is.
Even the role of purpose in our lives.
And it's all connected.
It is. It really is.
To this idea of using therapy and emotional intelligence to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Exactly. But before we wrap up this second part of our deep dive, there's one more topic I want to touch on.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is it?
Well, our source mentions this idea of growth being a lifelong journey.
Right.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that this journey isn't always easy.
Absolutely not. There will be challenges and setbacks along the way.
There will be. And it's okay to not have all the answers.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And in fact, I think it's in those moments of uncertainty and struggle that we learn the most about ourselves.
I think so too. It's like those times force us to dig deeper and find new resources within ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes those challenges can even lead to unexpected breakthroughs.
That's true. So it's about embracing the messy, imperfect nature of growth.
It is.
Right.
It is. And remembering that we don't have to do it alone.
We don't. We have each other, we have our support systems, and we have the tools of therapy and emotional intelligence to guide us. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive, but there's still so much to explore. We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up and leave you with some final thoughts. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. As we kind of wrap up our deep dive here into therapy and emotional intelligence, I'm really struck by how interconnected these concepts are.
Yeah, I agree. It's like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Both working together to help us navigate life's complexities and build those stronger relationships.
Yeah. And our source, 10 valuable therapy and emotional intelligence advice for success. It really gives us some practical insights into how we can use these tools, to create a more fulfilling life, a more meaningful life.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, we talked about everything from self-awareness and vulnerability to setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Mastering emotional regulation.
It's a lot to take in. Yeah, it is. It is. But I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that growth is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, I agree.
And that journey is unique for each of us.
It is.
There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Right. And it's not about achieving some perfect state of emotional enlightenment.
No.
It's about showing up every day.
It is.
And doing the best we can with the tools that we have.
Progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's a really empowering message because it means we don't have to have it all figured out. We can be messy and imperfect and still be on the right track.
We can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we can always learn and grow. There's always something new to discover about ourselves and the world.
There is.
So true. And that kind of brings me to something I've been thinking about throughout this whole conversation. Our source, really focuses on the many benefits of therapy and emotional intelligence.
Right.
But I'm curious, what are some of the potential challenges or pitfalls,
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And an important one to consider.
Yeah.
I think one potential challenge with therapy is that it can be difficult to find the right therapist.
Oh, yeah. But
very personal relationship.
It is.
And it's so important to feel comfortable and safe with the person that you're working with.
Right.
It's not one size fits all approach.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes it takes time to find the right fit. And even when you do find a great therapist, the work itself can be challenging.
It can, because it often requires us to face some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our past.
Right, and that can be painful at times.
It can.
But it's also where the real growth happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to go through the darkness to get to the light.
Exactly. And as for emotional intelligence, I think one potential pitfall is that it can be misused.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, someone with high emotional intelligence could potentially use their understanding of emotions to manipulate or control others.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that before, but you're right. It's like any tool; it can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly. So I think it's important to be aware of that potential, and to use our emotional intelligence ethically, responsibly.
It's about being mindful of our intentions.
Yeah.
And using our knowledge to help ourselves and others.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to remember that emotional intelligence is not a substitute for professional help.
Right. If someone is struggling with a mental health condition, emotional intelligence alone isn't going to be enough.
It's not,
Yeah.
It's important to seek professional support when needed.
And to remember that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up here, I'm curious, what's one thing you'll take away from this deep dive?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is just this reminder that we all have the power to change and grow.
Yeah.
And it might not always be easy, but with the right tools and support, we can create lives that are more aligned with our values and goals.
Yeah, I love that. What about you?
What will you take away?
I think for me, it's the importance of integrating both therapy and emotional intelligence into my life. It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about using both to support my overall well-being.
Right. That's great. Yeah. I think I'll walk away remembering that while this journey of self-discovery can be challenging, it's ultimately incredibly rewarding. It's about connecting with our true selves, building stronger relationships, and living a life that's full of meaning and purpose.
Beautifully said. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, our listener, for joining us on this journey.
Yes, thank you.
And we hope you'll continue to explore these concepts. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep embracing the power of therapy and emotional intelligence.
That's right.
Until next time, take care.